Top of the morning to you. That doesn't sound right because I'm Northern Irish and I have to put on a slightly Southern Irish accent to say that. However, we, as in that's very we, or it's bucketing down, that does sound right, or I know where you live. So that's enough of the Irish lingo for the minute. Today this video is about editing. I'm going to show you how I edit the tree, and to make it simple, I've tried to compress things. I haven't get into the advanced techniques or anything that will confuse matters. Try to keep it really easy so anybody can pick this up, give it a go, edit your pictures, make them look really good, and hopefully it can help. Thanks very much for joining me. Change the music up a little bit and let's get into this. So first thing I do is look at cropping. So I have a look at my image to decide whether it's straight or not, and then I work on the shadows and I crop again because I'm a bit like that. I keep tweaking the crop and moving it around, and then I have a look at the edges of the image just to be sure there's no bits of grass like that sticking in. So I'll clone those out, check where it takes the clone from and move it to somewhere that's a bit more relevant. I don't want to take it from the center of the sun. Next thing I do is I have a little look at the lens calibration. So that's just in the lens correction section. Turn on remove chromatic aberration and also enable lens correcting. That takes away some of the defects that a lens might produce. Pump the contrast up to about only 25 depending. Drones and digital SLRs I tend to do the same, about 25 contrast. I don't like my images to be over contrasty. When I pull the highlights back. Now this is an area of controversy. People tend to pull the highlights back too far. You got to remember the sun's very bright and it has to stay that way. You don't want it losing that glow it has. So the next thing I do is I zoom out and take a look at the image and think, right, well, the light's coming from the sun, obviously. So I need to enhance that and show that strong light coming from there. So I add the light with a circular gradient, add the warmth, and then zoom back in and I'll pull the main exposure back, checking the histogram to see what bits are too bright and what bits are too dark. You can see the image is starting to get a really nice mood about it. The warmths are starting to come through and the blues from the right hand side. I'm just going to tweak the crop again. And I'm going to add another gradient filter across the bottom. I just want to add a bit of warmth to the puddle. So the puddle has the same tones as the sky. Increase the exposure a little bit. The sky should always be that bit brighter than the puddle. And this is very image dependent. Just lots of little tweaks, adding warmth. And this is what I mean about layering a circular gradient. So the next thing I'm going to do is a thing called split toning. This is where you take the highlights and you make them warm, and you take the shadows and you make them cold. You can see what that little tab is there down the right hand side of Lightroom. Over here I want to add a bit of clarity. I'm going to pull the exposure back just a little bit, and I also want that to be slightly bluer because it is a lot colder over that side. The sun warmth hasn't quite reached that side of the sky. So this little brush tool will only change the areas that I touch with it, and I want to increase the exposure here. I've got it set to masking, so it should only go on the grass and maybe a tiny bit of the puddle, or the Great Lake as we like to call it. So I want the exposure just to be up a little bit. And I think the puddle that's looking a bit too bright. I want that a bit more shadowy, so I'm going to undo that. And I'll do a separate selection. So I'm just going to pull the highlights out a tiny bit, just gets a bit more of the sky, and I'm going to add a bit of warmth. So that takes the clouds that are catching the sunlight as they come across and they make them warm in the puddle. I guess what I'm going to do now? Yep, another crop. I'm never happy. I'm always cropping. So I'm going to add in a gradient filter at the top, make it a bit warmer, and just a few adjustments by pulling the bottom up there. That decreases the length of the gradient so it won't touch the bottom of the image. The sharpening, I'm going to mask the sharpening so I can see what areas I want sharpened. Anything that's white will be sharpened, anything that's not white won't be sharpened. So that keeps my sky nice and clean. And it just sharpens the tree, the grass, and everything that I think is relevant. Now this is a little bit of a secret here. Lens calibration, nobody really touches this. I tend to go down there and tweak about and see what I like. Now I tend to add a tiny bit more magenta. I'll add a little bit more in terms of the reds. And the yellows and the greens, I tend not to do them much. I mean, it doesn't really make a massive difference with the D850. And then the last one, the blues. Again, doesn't really make a huge difference. So I'm just going to add an overall warmth to the image, just to make it feel good. And then this is where I'm masking the whites. So the sun, you can see, is very bright. If I hold down the Option key on a Mac and put it left and right, you can see what areas get affected. So it just increases the brightness. So that would be your brilliance on an iPhone. And then the same with the blacks. I hold the Option key and this shows me the areas where the detail is going to completely disappear. This is a little thing inside Lightroom I feel often gets overlooked and people don't really use it very much, but it's very, very effective. So I'm going to add a bit more clarity to the sky. Another gradient, so it's localized, it's not the whole image. I very rarely do a complete clarity or dehaze for a whole image. Touch the highlights, bring those little clouds out. Pull the shadows back maybe. And I'm feeling that looks pretty good. So there you have it, that's the before and that's the after. Now there is a couple more steps that I do, which I'll show you in a second, but if you just want to do the basic editing, that is how I do most of my images. And then check, make sure there's no areas I'm really disappointed with, and this is the little clone tool I used at the start. It is pretty handy, it's a quick way of doing things. See if you happen to go into Photoshop, I take out the little stray pieces of grass, I guess it's like stray pieces of hair. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't think it'll work very well with this one, so let's have a quick check. Nah, it's looking too fake. I don't like it, so I'll just get rid of that. Happy with the first one, not so happy with the second one. And there you have it. I feel that's now a very strong image, that's how I saw it. So next up, this is going to be slightly more advanced. This is an area called tone curve. And I won't go into too many of the channels. This is just the basic tone curve on how I tend to get that more moody washed out looks that I go for. So all that information, that pyramid you can see is details within that photo. So it's your shadows over to the left and your highlights to the right and then everything in the middle. So I tend to just pull the shadows up a bit just to get them slightly washed out, almost like a film look. And then I take the middle information and pull it down, and you can see the difference that starts to make. It just starts to make things look very atmospheric, or it creates a mood about the image, which I just love. And really that's all there is to it. That is a very simple way to make very powerful images in Lightroom. So there you have it, everybody. That's how I do it, and you can see why I find it very relaxing. It totally changes my voice and the way I act, and it's so therapeutic. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully I will catch you next time. Have a great day.